You want to get the right things done for your security program. Sounds simple, but what are the right things for you? What does done mean? And how are you going to get there? Rapid7 realizes more than anyone how hard this can be. While Rapid7's Insight platform offers you industry-leading vulnerability management and detection and response solutions, their focus is on understanding where you are so that they can help you get where you're going. Visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7 to get started.
Security can't solve crucial problems when they have to wade through thousands of alerts a day. With ServiceNow, you can easily prioritize and respond to your most crucial business threats. That way you can go from overwhelmed to under control. ServiceNow brings security, risk, and IT together on one platform. Learn more at securityweekly.com/ServiceNow.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Scott Lyons and Josh Marpet. Please join Ocean and Security Weekly at Salve Regina University Pell Center on Wednesday, March 18, 2020, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for Ocean's Cyber Security Exchange Day. Visit securityweekly.com/Ocean 2020. That's OSHEAN 2020 to register for free. Paul will be on site that day as well. All right, our interview with the Lighthouse gentleman. Ben Budge is currently the systems administrator for Lighthouse Foods, a 100% employee-owned company, which is the #1 brand in refrigerated salad dressings in the United States and Canada. Prior to Lighthouse, Ben's career has spanned more than 15 years in the IT field, with an emphasis on compute, storage, and virtualization systems. Lyle Beck has been employed at Lighthouse for over 23 years, 19 of those being in the IT field, holding various positions, beginning at the help desk and growing into current position where he has managed the telecommunications server and network infrastructures for the last 9 years. He has also taken the responsibility for Lighthouse's information security program. Ben and Lyle, welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly.
Hello.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So we're going to talk network inspection. And what I thought would be interesting for the audience is, let's start with some of the challenges that Lighthouse is facing. You know, where were you in your security journey? What were some of the challenges you were facing? And why did you look at the network as kind of that next level of capabilities you wanted to add?
I'll go ahead and jump in, and I'm sure Lyle will have a lot to add. But we are, when we looked at the ExtraHop product or packet monitoring as a whole, we decided that it was a good time to kind of reevaluate our company structure and standpoint as it relies to information security. And what I mean by that is we've experienced just incredibly rapid growth as a company, and so we have our systems have shifted immensely, even in the last 3 years or so that I've been with Lighthouse. We're growing, 15, 20, 25% a year. We're adding new companies every year. We just bought out another company, so we've really shifted from that mom and pop small business and jumped everything in between and went straight into enterprise and had an enterprise need. And so when we started talking about, hey, it was like a light switch. We woke up one day and we were this enterprise. And how do you address security and where do you start and how do you build that stack? And it became really important and really apparent to us that the truth is really on the network or on the wire. And so it seemed like a logical place for us to start really digging into and getting insights, not only from a security perspective, but a systems and performance and stability perspective as well.
So you bring up a very interesting point that I think a lot of companies would love to understand kind of how this happened, right? Is you talked about it, right? You're a mom and pop, right? I'm curious, what were you doing from a security perspective then? Probably firewalls and some antivirus and some basic stuff, right? And then you said you woke up one day and the next thing you know, you're an enterprise and it's like, whoa, my network just exploded, my endpoints exploded. Do I have enough capabilities? Can you describe kind of like the before and then the realization of all these additional things you had to do as you got bigger?
Yeah, I think Lyle can speak more to the before, honestly, because I kind of came in the throes of all of this. But before it was really we had well, it was kind of an ad hoc system. We did what we did on a shoestring budget. We did what we could afford. And then we kind of woke up one day and literally we came in and had the discussion of, look, we have these systems that require 100% uptime because we're on a production schedule. We're producing around the clock. The 3 or 4 manufacturing sites we have now are not keeping up with the pace. We need to add infrastructure in that regard. And we just took a holistic look at everything. And so, yeah, we kind of started off with what everyone does, that the same progression of, early on, it's kind of this flat network. And then you realize like, hey, there's some issues there, and you subnet, and then you add maybe a better endpoint security, and you strap on these kind of systems. And then before you know it, you're kind of managing a bunch of stuff. And you don't really have a lot of insights as to what exactly is going on behind the scenes. And, we went from, kind of basic paper tracking to now everything goes through an ERP, and we have automation systems and print automation and line automation and just a myriad of different systems and processes to get our products out the door. And so we kind of probably came to that realization about a year and a half ago that like, we got to run this thing like an enterprise and not some SMB or mom and pop type business. And so over the last year, we've really hit the security side hard. I mean, you read every day about ransomware and its effects. You read every day about those bad actors or bots or whatever coming into your network, and the lack of visibility, along with some other things, was kind of frightening to us. And so that's what led us down again that network monitoring path. Is we thought, well, we do what everyone else does for the most part. You make sure you're good on your patching, you subnet your networks, you jump through all those hoops, but at the end of the day, you really can't get any deep level insights as to who's knocking on your network, what's your network doing, what are your line of business apps doing. We manufacturing, we sometimes get a little left out in the cold on some of the newer technologies, or even from a security standpoint. And we need to know, okay, is this product or this ERP not only performing the way it needs to, but is it performing and being secure? And how do you know? If you jump through all the right hoops, you can make that assumption, but without actually visually seeing the data go down the wire, you can't make any of those inferences one way or the other. So that's what kind of led us down that path and up to the current year. I know it's a quick overview, but that's the gist of it. I don't know if Lyle has anything else to add there, but
Yeah, I guess I would add quickly just that, in the older days, the excuse was always we just make salad dressing. So we wouldn't necessarily fork out a huge budget or anything for some of our solutions. So there was two things in my mind that really drove all this, and one is that just the phenomenal growth of the company and the need for the uptime. So in security, you got the CIA triad, and availability is one of the most important to us as a company because of our 4 manufacturing sites. They're producing all the time. They need systems up. So availability is a huge one for us. And the other thing that's really driving this is really just that the huge increase in the risk and the threats out there. It's not just these people in their basement anymore. It's people go to work every day to hack companies, and so it's a much greater risk than it used to be, and it's something that we have realized it's time to put a higher priority on it. So we've been kind of focusing on that side of things for 3 or 4 years now, and getting a better layered security on our network. And it's a work in progress, but ExtraHop has been an amazing tool for us in that regard.
I'm gonna throw something out here, and I'm really curious about this. You guys laid out a great story, and it makes so much sense to me. We've seen so many companies come from SMB, mom and pop, as you put it, well said, and really go, we're growing and fast, and all of a sudden our one help desk guy is overwhelmed, and now our entire help desk, and now our network people, and now wow, we've overrun the IP subnetting, and blah 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 blah. And so you're talking about how you had to scale from, as you put it, mom and pop to enterprise, which is perfect. Thank you. Very understood. And ExtraHop was a big help in that, and I love that. At what point, I'm really curious, at what point did it really matter to you that you needed to know, well, what ExtraHop does, which is who's talking to whom, east, west, north, south, everything? Where did that go? Okay, we got the value out of that.
I think there's a few instances of that. We knew we lacked on the network side of things. We had a few outages, through our MPLS that turned out to be carrier issues. From like they misconfigure their switch and it's now dropping packets.
That never happens.
Yeah, never, rare. Yeah, but how do you prove something like that, right? And it resulted in like a 3-day outage. And we're sitting there like, no, guys, we're not passing packets over XYZ size. Like, just address this. It's an MTU issue. And then finally, like 3 days in, they're like, oh, yeah, it's an MTU issue. But we didn't have anything to back that up other than simple ping, right? Like, we ping a site or the remote site that went down, and it works until we reach XYZ in packet size, and then it just stops passing those on. It's not fragmenting them. And then there you go. There's your problem, right? Simple from our side, but getting your carriers to stay honest is one thing. And the other thing we did is we decided that we didn't want to be one of those companies you hear about in the news, which we're still striving towards. Everything's always a work in progress. But we really didn't want to have a situation where, we're employee owned, and anything I do affects the shareholders, and the shareholders are my fellow employees. And so we have a lot of people's livelihoods tied up in our company, and a lot of people depend on us staying open. And you look at how startling it is of a statistic. It's some ridiculous number, and I'm going to botch this, but was it like 80 or close to 80% of companies that lose their data go under within 2 years? I mean, we can't have that. We have too many people.
Okay, I've got to disabuse you of something. So the statistic is attributed to the Information Security Forum that 60% of companies that have a cyber incident go under within 2 years. That's a fake statistic. Just FYI, ease your mind. Okay,
I've heard of that. Yeah. So but we still keep that in mind. So just thinking about all those things, and the statistic might be a little off. There's so much information out there. Sometimes it's hard to sort through what's accurate and not. I appreciate the input there. But it's still, regardless of the statistic, we still really wanted to ensure the integrity of our systems. And so through that process, we decided to do, some internal information security audits, and found some areas that were lacking. And one of the things was becoming more and more apparent that we didn't really know what was going on behind the scenes on our network. And so those were kind of the driving forces. It was the need to really want to protect our employees, and obviously our product and company. In so doing that, and also be able to keep our vendors honest. That was another big challenge for us.
Can you explain? Are you talking about like the carrier vendor? Do you mean like that?
Yeah, they're the carrier, or we had we paid for an ERP system, and I won't get into too much detail with that. But we had an instance where through our security audit, it determined that ERP system was sending passwords in plain text across our network.
Are you joking?
No, I'm not joking. And so we've been able to validate that with the ExtraHop, and through their support, we've been able to get that addressed. But even when they said, okay, here's the fix, and we implement their fix and it's still doing it, right? We can come back to that vendor and say, look, you guys, this is not working. And so we've been able to quantify the instances like that, or some of these old ERPs may rely on older SMB standards or older SSL or TLS, and so how do you deal with that? And you got to create a proxy and do a bunch of other stuff. So it's been a really good way and a good tool for us to just even find weak points or points of pain that you're not aware of. You set it all up and you follow your vendor's documentation, and you think, okay, the vendor is going to tell you how to do this right according to their best practice. And what if their best practices aren't up to standard?
Right.
Yeah.
Great visibility into other things on your network.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And so we've been able to rely on that product to, again, keep those people honest. It's not just a carrier thing, right? It transcends that into day-to-day application and things like that. But we've been able to get those sorts of issues addressed because we have the proof. I mean, when you go back and say, here's the raw packets, here's the password I've been able to pull out of these packets, your vendor can't really argue at that point that they have a secure product, right? Takes all the wind out of their sails.
They have a hard time arguing. Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And so you've caught your vendors with both carriers and ERP system. You've used it to determine what's going on behind the scenes. You've used it to keep track of what's happening in your network. This one tool has effectively become a Swiss Army knife for you guys, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's kind of our de facto tool. Now, whenever we see something that doesn't look right or an alert happens, it's the first place we look immediately. I had an instance where I had a user complaining about one of our database servers being slow. Well, I went into the ExtraHop, took a look, and the server processing time was high because we can see round trip, and we knew that it was definitely appeared to be a server-side problem. But when we dug into it, she was running like a 40 gig query, and there were 3 people stacked up behind her, another one that was 20, 10, 15, and you can't just hammer a box like that and expect good performance. You start hogging disk IO and you have problems, and then it becomes a business continuity issue. And so I was able to validate, like, look, you've got an inefficient query. You need to go back and rework it and then try again, because this isn't going to work. And that was a year ago, and I haven't had a complaint since, because once you kind of show people or show users even, or vendors or whomever, like, look, here's the proof, we're doing this wrong or incorrectly, or we're approaching this the wrong way, it becomes pretty easy to diagnose those problems. So it's definitely touts itself as a security tool, but it has become so much more to us that it's become one of our de facto tools, like I said. So
when I think about, so you knew you had a gap. How did you evaluate the different tools? I'm curious how you evaluated. You don't have to name who else you evaluated. I'm just curious, what kind of criteria did you use to evaluate the different tools? And then what are some of the things that kind of made it easy for you to make the decision to go with ExtraHop?
So we evaluated probably 2 or 3 other tools. We had been using, a product called Nagios, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. It's kind of a old school SNMP monitor, and that had a few gaps for us, and we switched to another product called Avic, but with just the standard up-down monitoring, it just leaves out a lot, and so we knew that we needed something else to fill that gap. Originally, we had had the wish list of wanting everything under one pane of glass, which, as you know, is hard to do. It's a tall order for any product. And so we looked at, the big names, the Riverbeds, the SolarWinds. We don't have a huge IT staff, so anything that we bought had to be manageable, not full time. And that's one of the things with some of those products, the Riverbeds and the Nagios. They're great products, but if you don't have the dedicated resources, it makes it a challenge to see ROI, because you inevitably turn these things on, they chirp, you narrow it down as best you can, and then you just kind of start ignoring it. And so we wanted to avoid situations like that. That was a big deal for us. And so through one of our vendors we spoke with, and through Gartner, we kind of did some more research. We POC'd all these products, and it became really apparent through the POC that not only could we see ROI pretty quickly. I mean, within a half hour of installing the thing, we found problems that were actionable, which is rare nowadays.
Yeah.
And the group of people we worked with at ExtraHop, I think, played a big part in it. They have a lot of talented folks over there. Not to say that the other companies don't, but they just seem to really understand what we were after and what we needed, and they were able to bring their product to the forefront of our attention and show that it did in fact do what they said it did. Now there were a few caveats to that, but that was the gist of it.
I've got to say that it's fascinating that you're saying that, well, normally you put the stuff in, it chirps, you look at it, it chirps again, you look at it, it chirps a third time, you're like, oh, come on, I've got work to do. And you ignore it from there on out. And also the fact that you need people to monitor all of these things, because I see the coffee machine in the back of your cube, and anybody with an espresso machine, I think it is, in their own cubicle, obviously spends way too many late nights there. Okay. And so I'm just going to ask.
I don't like the coffee they have, so I'm kind of a snob, but so
you work at a food company, man. I'm just saying, okay.
Yeah. Fair enough. And the late nights we have definitely reduced for sure.
Really?
But we've come a long way with it, and it's driven a lot of things for us to where we're starting to automate more off of it. We had a few challenges getting the east-west traffic out of VMware into the product because it is packet capture. So you have to send raw packets to that box. It's not like you have an agent or an SNMP trap or something like that. You've got to send packets. So we were able to do that. We had a few challenges because we didn't know what we didn't know. And if it's a product that, if you're looking at an ExtraHop, we would heavily recommend some sort of packet aggregation, right? And packet forwarding. We ended up with a Gigamon to help kind of offload some of that off. Yep. Because you can get the east-west traffic out of VMware without packet aggro. You have to, if you're running standard switches, which most people are, you have to go do a distributed switch, and then you have to port mirror, and then you send a bunch of messy data out, which is fine, kind of, because there is dedupe on the ExtraHop appliance, but they also have a trace appliance that's for raw packet capture that does not dedupe. So it becomes a bit of a challenge without some form of packet aggro. So that was something that we didn't know we needed until kind of after the fact. It was easy enough to get in place and get things, validated and working, but it's definitely just kind of a tip for anybody that's looking at technologies like this. If you don't already have packet aggro, you're going to want it. For sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Your time to value was 30 minutes, right? From the time of install, you saw actionable data on the network, which is great. You get your proof, and then you start to roll it out, and then you realize, oh yeah, at scale, I need a couple other things in the mix to make it a little more efficient, like packet aggregation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could tap it, you can do some other things, but you're going to want that. I think the thing that's nice about the ExtraHop that really brought the value was there was very little sorting. It saw an IP address, it assigned it as its own device, and then once you get those packets in there, it'll look at everything all the way through layer 7 if you want it to. And so you can get those really deep analytics, and per device, you can search for a device or a user or whatever, and it'll bring you right to where you need to be, and you can just start using it. You don't have to say, okay, this device belongs over here and set up these groups. It kind of figures itself out fairly accurately right away. And I think that's why we were able to get value within minutes. Of course, your mileage will vary depending on environment, but we saw, once we saw the value within minutes, it kind of sold itself, which is why probably they asked us to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are you? What was your criteria for defining value? Right? And I'm trying to lead into a bigger question. So how did you criteria the value?
We really have a pretty simple approach. I believe in keeping things fairly simple. And that was, when it sends an alert, is it actionable and reasonable to not only pursue? I mean, because there's a cost versus time cost to anything, right? And sometimes you get some obscure alert that's, not that actionable, and you spend 3 hours digging into, and lo and behold, it's nothing, or it's low priority or low impact or something that it doesn't really matter.
Right.
So we had to have actionable alerts, and we had to have a relatively easy to use, intuitive interface, because we had planned on getting this out in front of more than just our IT team. We planned and continue to plan on leveraging it and getting information in front of our operations team, and so it does transcend IT a little bit, and so we wanted to make sure we had the ability and the ease of use and understanding to get some information out of it in front of somebody that doesn't maybe know IT but could still recognize what was being said and why. And so
Right.
we got a lot of that out of the unit as well.
So that leads into the bigger question. What is the methodology that you're taking to not only define your metrics for outside effectors, but how are you getting those metrics across?
That's still kind of a work in progress for us, honestly. We are, again, kind of a small unit. So we're as far as like a metrics from a security perspective, we're still building out some of the framework, and I don't want to be too revealing there. But yeah, that's about all I can speak to that. I'm sure Lyle's got more for you on that question, honestly.
Well, to me, I keep coming back to the uptime, availability of our systems. And we got to a point where we were having so many problems that simple traditional SNMP and up-down monitoring couldn't solve the real issue. Yeah, they'd tell us there's a problem, but there was a root cause and we weren't getting to that. And some of these problems took us like 5 hours to dig into. Meanwhile, the whole company's suffering because there's this weird outage. And so having ExtraHop, we're able to get the truth because it's in the packets and we can get to it quickly. We resolve the problem much, much faster, and uptime is increased because of that. So to me, a lot of the value with ExtraHop is keeping systems available, being able to troubleshoot much, much quicker and resolve things.
So time, truth, uptime, that's part of time, I guess. So no, actually, speed of resolution, uptime of systems, truth in numbers, if you will, truth in packets. How's that sound?
Truth in packets sounds great.
Truth in packets, and being able to verify vendors as well as internal people, being able to watch over, having that oversight. That's not a bad set of factors.
No.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
and
Matt,
you guys have a unique environment, right? Because I think about it, right? You're a manufacturer, right? You're not going to throw endpoints on some of these devices, and you're not going to actively scan some of these environments because you don't want to shut down a plant. But you're getting the visibility, you're getting the actionability, and you're getting the availability that you need to continue to run your environment all at the network layer, which I think is an interesting way to think about it versus some of the other types of industries that are out there.
Yeah, and one more thing to add, from a manufacturing standpoint, is our operations network. Those devices, a lot of those PLC devices, which they're their own ball game in regards to network and security and a lot of things, even though they're network devices. Traditional monitoring is really tough because a lot of those devices are not designed for large packets per second. And, you hit something like small, like 500 to 1,000, and some of those things will fall over. Well, traditional monitoring can hammer devices like that. And so we also needed something that our sensitive we could get insights out of our sensitive devices and our manufacturing devices, and not have to worry about if they will fall over or not from packet count. And so being able to just take those packets, right, and mirror them and feed them into the appliances, we've been able to just avoid all of those issues, because we've tried for years to get some form of monitoring on those PLC networks. And it's always been a challenge under traditional models because of those limitations on those sensitive devices as well. So it just holistically fit our environment. I mean, when you take in, all those things we discussed in consideration together, and it really became pretty much the only product that could do it. And so that's why we made our decision.
Yeah, it's a great story. Ben and Lyle, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly.
Thank you for having us.
If anyone wants to learn more about ExtraHop or try Reveal X Cloud for free, please visit securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Scott and Josh, thanks for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week at RSA Conference 2020 on Enterprise Security Weekly.